The Chicago Blackhawks face off with Alex Ovechkin as he has a chance to break Wayne Gretzky's record.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How we doing, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Quick favor right off the jump, please go and hit that like button, hop in the comment section below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, all of which is 100% free, will not cost you anything, and helps me out in a massive way as I'm now on the climb to 3,000 subscribers. But happy Friday, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Alex Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals take on the Blackhawks here tonight. And in case you've been living under a rock, don't know exactly what's going on with Ovechkin and the Washington Caps, Ovechkin has an opportunity here this evening to break Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record. We've seen him score a hat trick to set a record against the Chicago Blackhawks in the past, and with the Hawks having so many young defensemen on the back end right now, they've also dropped 11 of their last 12 games. I certainly wouldn't put it past the Great Eight to go and get that record done here this evening. Before I get into a preview of tonight's matchup with Ovi and the Washington Capitals, though, I did want to be sure to recap the Blackhawks' frustrating 3-2 shootout loss to the Colorado Avalanche on Wednesday night in their last time out, since I wasn't able to get an episode out yesterday. Thursdays are always my busy days, especially coming after a game that decided to start at 9 p.m. Central Time in Chicago during the middle of the week, and then, of course, ended up going to a shootout and wrapped up right around midnight. Quick turnaround for your boy having to go to work early yesterday morning, so apologies for not getting my recap on this matchup out sooner, but Blackhawks had it, man. Up 2-0 going into the third period. Now, it wasn't the prettiest of performances, and it did feel like they were walking on eggshells a little bit, but for this game to start as late as it did and to end the way that it did, super, super frustrating as someone who stayed up watching it from start to finish, and I'm sure there's many Blackhawks fans out there feeling the same way. Blackhawks really wasted a nice bounce back performance out of Spencer Knight. And in the episode that I dropped earlier this week on Tuesday, I discussed some of the Blackhawks goaltending struggles over the last 2 to 3 weeks, with Spencer Knight having his save percentage really take a dip, along with Arvid Soderblom's struggles ever since returning from the Four Nations face-off. Make sure to go and check that out if you haven't already, because I also talked about how well Drew Commesso has been playing for the Rockford Ice Hogs as they're creeping towards the best-of-3 play-in series for the Calder Cup playoffs. But Spencer Knight was outstanding in this game against the Avs, wound up stopping 29 of the 31 shots that he faced in regulation. But altogether, even though the Blackhawks weren't able to get across the finish line and get Spencer Knight that victory, which he definitely deserved with the way that he played, it was altogether just nice to see him kind of stabilize his game after posting 4 sub-900 save percentages, 4 sub-900 save percentage games in his last 5 outings. A huge reason also why the Blackhawks were able to stay ahead until the final moments of the third period and in overtime was because of an outstanding performance by the penalty kill. 4 for 4 on the game against one of the most dangerous top power play units in all of hockey, with Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar, who would eventually go on to connect later on in the game. But really good stuff out of the Blackhawks penalty kill unit that, because there are just so many kids on the scene, there's a lot of youngsters getting opportunities with the Blackhawks shorthanded. I thought they did an excellent job in this game, and also got a shorthanded goal from Ilya Mikheyev, who just stays red hot, Blackhawks fans, giving him now 8 goals over his last 18 games, 18 now on the season, just 3 short of his previous career high. The Blackhawks as a team only have 3 shorthanded goals this year. Ilya Mikheyev has all of them, and I don't think that should be too big of a surprise given the speed that he plays with, one of the best skaters on this Blackhawks team, able to generate some 2-on-1 rushes, odd man breaks for himself, while the team is shorthanded. And that kind of gives me the same vibes that I think we're going to see for many years while the Hawks are shorthanded with Oliver Moore and Frank Nazar. Both guys have similar wheels, maybe even better wheels than Ilya Mikheyev, and make a really great effort on the defensive side of things. I think that's something we're going to see out of number 91, Frank Nazar, and number 11, Oliver Moore, for a long, long time. Love that Ilya Mikheyev is kind of showing those youngsters the ropes of how to get it done on the penalty kill. Also got to give a shout out to Connor Murphy, Blackhawks fans, who, of course, is the longest tenured member of this team, one of the only veterans who's still in the lineup on a nightly basis. And I thought he had one of his best games of the entire season. An absolute blast from the point for a second goal of the year, first since way back on December 15th against the New York Islanders. That put the Blackhawks ahead 2-0 following Ilya Mikheyev's shorthanded goal. Got to give a shout out to Connor Bedard as well. Beautiful play by Bedard and that top line of he, Donato, and Mikheyev that Paul Bizanet and TNT outlined during their intermission. Not a pond hockey type of play out of Connor Bedard, as he, Donato, and Mikheyev all showed a lot of great tenacity along the boards. I mean, the puck was pinned up there for maybe 10 to 15 seconds, and as Biz went through like all the rotations that line had, Mikheyev supporting his defenseman on one side, allowing Murphy to keep the play alive on the right-hand point, and then wheeling all the way back around to the left-hand side, which allowed Ethan Del Mastro to pinch up into the play and keep the play alive. He works it down the wall to Bedard, and then Bedard finds Connor Murphy with a one-timer from the right dot. Nice play by Murphy, by the way, as well, to kind of cheat his way down to the top of the circles and not take that one-timer from so far out. I really think that's something the Blackhawks power play unit needs to work on. Far too many blue line shots over the last few years have been coming from way too far out towards the blue line. I think Artem Levshinov and honestly Sam Rinzel as well, maybe not necessarily in this game, as I'll get to during segment 2, the Blackhawks power play looked horrible, but altogether, Levshinov and Rinzel with their aggressiveness, awareness, and also skating ability on that power play unit, I think it's really important to start cheating down a little bit to give yourself less surface area to go in, rip that puck home, pass an opposing goaltender. While it wasn't on the power play, I think Connor Murphy showed a perfect example of that on this goal. And with that assist, by the way, from Bedard, he does once again tie Ryan Donato for the team lead in points with 59, as the Blackhawks have just 7 games left on their schedule. We'll see if it's number 98 or number 8 who winds up leading the team in points here this season. I mentioned in my preview episode, going through this matchup on Wednesday morning, that Oliver Moore was playing the center ice position for the first time, Blackhawks fans, after making his NHL debut on the wing last Sunday. He centered the third line in between Landon Slaggert and Lukas Reichel. Kind of an unfortunate night for that trio. They really struggled to get anything set up in the offensive zone. I thought they had a couple of good zone entries and utilized the speed that all three of them carry pretty well with one another for their first time skating as a line. However, Lukas Reichel did have to leave this game briefly due to an injury. Fortunately, was able to return though. But Landon Slaggert, man, had himself a real rough go of it. And it's been a little bit of a struggle for Slags over these last couple of weeks. 2 bad penalties by Slaggert in this game, and on the opening goal that the Avs scored to cut the Blackhawks deficit in half, finally get one past Spencer Knight and get on the board. It was Slaggert who lost Cale Makar in coverage, which is just an absolute no-can-do. You got to keep your eyes on Makar at all times, especially when he's out there with Nathan MacKinnon. Slaggert and the Blackhawks gave Makar way too much room to work with. That cut the Blackhawks deficit in half and gave the Avs some momentum in those final 10 minutes. And then, of course, the Blackhawks not able to hang on with just only 10.7 seconds left to go. I feel so bad for not only all the people who, like me, stayed up watching this game from start to finish, but all the people who were in attendance supporting this Blackhawks squad at the United Center, thinking they were going to get a win up 2-0 with half a period to go. And then for the Avs to tie it the way they did with 10 seconds left to play. Blackhawks not able to finish the job in front of their home crowd. Super, super frustrating. Game winds up going into a shootout, and the Avs wind up pulling through. Kind of the story of the season. So close, yet so far for this Blackhawks team. One thing I mentioned in my preview as well, they've fared well against this Colorado Avalanche bunch. They had a chance to pick up a win against them late in the season, which I think would have been really big for this young group. Unable to get across the finish line, though. They've now dropped 11 of their last 12 games, falling to 21, 44, and 10 on the season. Still just 2 points ahead of the San Jose Sharks for the best odds at landing the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NHL draft. But there are my thoughts on the Blackhawks not being able to finish off the job and blowing a 2-0 lead en route to a 3-2 shootout loss to the Colorado Avalanche on Wednesday night. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll talk a little bit more about Ovechkin possibly breaking Wayne Gretzky's record and what we can expect to see out of the Blackhawks lineup when they take on the Capitals. But first, Blackhawks fans, I got to talk to you all real quick about game time. There's nothing like watching basketball live. The energy of the crowd, the sound of sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. And if you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets now easier than ever, because with Game Time's new feature called Game Time Picks, they filter out the fluff and show you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. And Game Time Picks even highlights super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck so that you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. To take advantage of this right now, make sure to go and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps, and you'll get $20 off with your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps, LOCKEDONNHL, for $20 off with your first purchase. What time is it? It's game time. Segment 2. As I mentioned right off the jump, Alex Ovechkin on home ice has an opportunity to become the all-time leading goal scorer in NHL history, which, for people who maybe aren't diehard hockey fans, which hard for me to imagine, there's too many people tuning into this podcast who aren't diehard hockey fans or diehard Blackhawks fans who are unaware of what Alex Ovechkin is doing. But I truly believe this is one of the greatest, if not the greatest accomplishment in professional sports. I mean, breaking anything Wayne Gretzky has done, that kind of says it all himself. But for Ovi to do this in the modern era with the goaltending advancements and the game not being as high scoring as it once was, for him to even sniff this record is incredible in and alone of itself. And whether it's going to happen here tonight against the Blackhawks, which I do think is in the cards, Blackhawks fans, we obviously saw Ovi score a hat trick a couple of seasons ago. I believe that was for him to score 600. That occurred at the United Center. And just with all the youth on the back end for the Blackhawks, you got a feeling the Capitals, knowing this is on home ice, I'm sure they love to get it done for Ovi in front of the home crowd. Probably going to be feeding them for one-timers. This is also a Blackhawks team that has not done a very good job staying out of the penalty box all season long. Look, I'm not going to predict that Alex Ovechkin, I'm not saying it's set in stone he's going to get in a hat trick here tonight, but it's definitely in the cards, Blackhawks fans. So, I'm sure this is a conversation that's going on within the Blackhawks dressing room. I'm sure they do not want to be the team that's always going to be remembered for allowing Alex Ovechkin to score the record. But also, at the end of the day, I don't really know if there's much that this young group is able to do about it when push comes to shove there. But should be a fun matchup. 6 p.m. Central Time, by the way, Blackhawks fans. At least the 8:52 puck drop on Wednesday against the Avs. That's the latest puck drop we'll have for the remainder of the year. In fact, there actually won't be a game starting later than 6 o'clock in these final 7 games. Each of the Blackhawks' 2 remaining games at the United Center, Sunday against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then next Saturday against the Winnipeg Jets. Both of those games start at 6, I believe, and then they'll have a game on Tuesday that starts at 5, I think, against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then the rest of their games will be starting at 6 p.m. Central Time as well. So games ending a little bit earlier on the bright side, as we now are playing hockey in April. Won't be playing hockey in April for too long, though. As far as the Blackhawks projected lineup here this evening, I'm recording this prior to them hitting the ice for the morning skate in the nation's capital. But even though it was yet another loss for the Hawks in their last time out, I really don't see any reason to go and change things up in this lineup. Gotta leave Ryan Donato, Connor Bedard, and Ilya Mikheyev with one another. That has to remain the top line for these final 7 games. Teuvo Teravainen, Frank Nazar, and Tyler Bertuzzi, I think, is a fine second line. Frank Nazar continues to give himself opportunities to score goals basically every single night. The finishing aspect has just kind of eluded him at this point, but I do think, as I reiterated a couple of days ago, I believe in his skill set. I think he's going to be able to figure out how to convert those at some point in time. It's like, just keep knocking on the door, giving yourself chances, and eventually they're going to go in, Frankie. The wheels, it's all about the speed with the kid, and he certainly utilizes those to make an impact in lots of different ways. Even though it was not a good first game together for the Landon Slaggert, Oliver Moore, Lucas Reichel third line, I think it's worth giving them another crack here this late in the season. I mean, look, if the Blackhawks lose, it's really not the end of the world at this point. I think it's worthwhile to give these guys an opportunity to establish some chemistry with one another, especially 3 young guys like Slaggert, Moore, and Reichel, who will all likely be here next season unless something crazy happens this summer involving a trade. And then Nick Foligno, Joe Veleno, and Pat Maroon, I would expect round things out as the 4th line with Philip Kurashev serving as the healthy scratch. Colton Dach, still no update on him skating with a puck. Last update we had on him was him skating without a puck. With that being the case and only 7 games left on the schedule, I guess we're not seeing Colton Dach again in game action this year. On defense, I mentioned that Sam Rinzel got his first crack on the top pairing with Alex Vlasic on Wednesday night. Not really a notable game out of Sam Rinzel. Definitely not as noticeable as he was in his NHL debut on Sunday. But I think, again, like playing Slaggert, Moore, and Reichel, it's worth giving Vlasic and Rinzel another opportunity with one another. Wyatt Kaiser and Artie Levshinov, I would like to see as the second pairing. I would guess it's going to be Ethan Del Mastro and Connor Murphy rounding things out. However, I do wonder if the Blackhawks want to get Kevin Korchinski back in there, or if they're going to wait till Sunday against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Fully expect him to draw back into the lineup for at least one of those 2 games. And should that be the case, you know, who's coming out? I'd probably guess it's Ethan Del Mastro, but you never know. Also, Alec Martinez has been knocking on the door for a potential return. I know we're kind of focusing on the kids this late in the season, but wonder if Anders Sorensen and the coaching staff wants to get Alec back in there for one more game. And then, of course, Louis Crevier hasn't played in a handful of contests as well. We'll see if any of those guys who have kind of been on the outside looking in, except for Korchinski, wind up playing in these final 6 games of the season. I think you can expect to see at least one more game from all of those guys that I just mentioned, Crevier, or those 2 guys that I just mentioned, Crevier and Alec Martinez. TJ Brody, I think he's fully aware that he's played his last game as a member of the Blackhawks. No confirmation as to who's going to get the nod in between the pipes tonight. I'm sure Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals would probably like to see Arvid Soderblom, considering how things have gone for him since the 4 Nations break. Spencer Knight, nice bounce back game on Wednesday. Wouldn't be too shocked to see Sorensen ride the hot hand and go with him once again, but it is also Anders Sorensen's turn to get the start. So we'll see who winds up working in the starters crease for the Blackhawks when they hit the ice for the morning skate. I'm going to guess it winds up being Spencer Knight, but wouldn't be crazy to see Arvid Soderblom in there either. But there is everything I have before the Blackhawks take on the Washington Capitals at 6 p.m. Central Time here tonight. Alex Ovechkin, an opportunity to make NHL history and become the all-time leading goal scorer, surpassing Wayne Gretzky. We'll see if it happens here tonight against the Blackhawks. But coming up in just a moment before I close out today's episode, still got to get into an update on all the playoff races going down across the NHL. Real quick though, Blackhawks fans, I got to talk to you all first about the fine folks over at FanDuel. March Madness and the Final Four are here, and FanDuel is now giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Because right now, new customers can get $200 worth of bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Again, that's $200 in extra bucks that you can use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories to even who's going to cut down the nets. And with tournament games happening on Saturday and Monday here this weekend, you know there's going to be something exciting you want to place a wager on. And again, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So what are you waiting for? Go and check out FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action this weekend when the Frozen Four goes down. The Frozen Four. Meant to say the Final Four, whatever. Thank you all again for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, giving you the league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. You can easily find the link to Locked On NHL right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, with most teams in the NHL down to their final 7 to 8 games here of the season, I definitely wanted to get into an update on all the playoff races that are going down over the next couple of weeks, starting here in the Central Division. As I talked about a couple of days ago before the Blackhawks took on the Avs, Colorado pretty set in stone for the third spot in the Central Division, but it is a neck-and-neck battle between the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars as to who's going to come away with the number 1 spot and get home ice throughout the postseason. Winnipeg currently has the lead with 108 points in 76 games. Dallas, though, has made this a battle. They're just 4 points back of Winnipeg with a game in hand. They've only played 75 games, while Winnipeg has played 76. So exciting to see this race come down to the wire as to who's going to take the top spot in the Central Division. Going out to the Pacific Division, it is still a battle as to who's going to come out with this division as well. The Vegas Golden Knights currently hold the top spot with 98 points in 75 games. However, the Los Angeles Kings right behind them with 95 points in 75 games, just 3 points back. And the Edmonton Oilers aren't completely toast from winning the division either, as they have 93 points in 75 games as well. 5 points back of the Vegas Golden Knights for the Central. I do think Winnipeg is going to ultimately wind up with that top spot when it's all said and done. I think Vegas is going to hold on to that number 1 spot as well. But as I predicted the last time I talked about these playoff races, I think Edmonton is going to surpass Los Angeles and get that 2 seed. I think LA is going to be the one to hold the 3 spot. And then that takes us into the wild card in the West. The St. Louis Blues just continue to win hockey games. Still number 1 in the wild card with 91 points through 77 games. They've surpassed the Minnesota Wild, although Minnesota is still on their heels, just 2 points back with 89 points. And they do have a game in hand, having only played 76 games. But it does look like the teams in the playoffs right now out west are going to be the squad qualifying when it comes to a close. As Calgary, in the wild card standings, are 5 points back of the Minnesota Wild with only 7 games to go. They have 84 points. And then the Vancouver Canucks, pretty much out of the playoff race altogether, as they have 81 points, 8 points back with only 7 games left in the season. So something crazy would have to happen for either the Canucks or the Flames, honestly, to go and jump Minnesota in the standings. Fully expect St. Louis and Minnesota to be the 1 and 2 wild card spots out west. Then going into the Eastern Conference, the Atlantic Division, super interesting coming down to the wire. The Maple Leafs currently hold the top spot. I predicted them a couple of months ago to come away with this division win. They have 96 points in 75 games. The Tampa Bay Lightning actually are number 2 right now with 93 points in 75 games, just 3 points back. And then the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers have hit a little bit of a lull. Not a very great month of March, despite having one of the best trade deadlines. They're now in the 3rd spot with 92 points in 75 games. I do think the Panthers are going to jump Tampa Bay, but it looks like we're going to have another first round Florida playoff battle between the Lightning and the Bolts. The Metropolitan Division is the most boring division in hockey. Washington has locked it up with 105 points in 75 games, not officially, but basically at this point. Carolina in second with 96 points in 74 games. Real chippy game, by the way, between the Capitals and the Carolina Hurricanes the other night. I tweeted out it's going to be hilarious when neither of these teams do anything in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And then the New Jersey Devils, who I also think aren't going to do anything in the Stanley Cup playoffs, have 87 points in 76 games. The wild card, a little more interesting out in the East. However, Ottawa looks pretty good at this point. They have 86 points in 75 games, 5 points clear of the Montreal Canadiens, and 7 points clear of the New York Rangers, who are on the edge of making a playoff. They have a 7-point cushion in terms of getting into the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Montreal Canadiens right behind them. Nice little run for the Canadiens. Can they wind up sneaking their way in? 81 points in 75 games. They have a 2-point cushion for that final wildcard spot over the New York Rangers, who have 79 points in 75 games. Both Montreal and New York with 7 games left. Montreal with a 2-point advantage, though. Columbus, who, not to toot my own horn, it pains me to say it, I kind of predicted the downfall on an NHL squad show a couple of months ago. They've lost all their momentum. Only 4 points back of Montreal for that final playoff spot, and they do have a game in hand. They have 8 games left in the season. However, I think that ship has already sailed. I believe it's going to be Ottawa and Montreal when it's all said and done. New York was the team, I guess, though, that would make a push if Montreal's not going to get it done. I think the Rangers are the team that passes them, but there are all the playoff races going down with just a week and a half left in the 24-25 NHL regular season. That's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Until the next episode, everyone, enjoy your weekends. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.